Hey everybody, welcome to the test episode, or episode 1, or episode 0 of the BoonePod, Boone Podcast, Boonecast, whatever you'd like to call it. Even I haven't really fully decided on a name yet, but here I am recording the test episode, and what this podcast is, if you can't read the description of the YouTube video, of, whatever I end up putting this podcast on, this podcast is all about finding, meeting, and interviewing cool, interesting people in and around the Boone area, most specifically App State. I am not wholly opposed to interviewing someone who doesn't go to App State. App State has some of the most creative people you can find in North Carolina. I fully believe that. Because unlike other colleges like NC State or University of North Carolina or Western or wherever else, Boone is really good at exporting really creative people. It's because we're really far away from everybody else. We're on top of a mountain. We're not in the Piedmont like everybody else. We are on top of a mountain. I'm not going to say the air's thin, but it is thinner. There's less of it to go around than down the mountain. And maybe that pushes people to really, make really creative stuff. And that's really cool. I find that really interesting ever since I started, coming here as a kid. And now that I've moved up here and I'm a, full-time student at Appalachian State University, I think it's really cool the amount of creative people on campus. So, I would love to talk to more of them. Whether that be people that, they make art, they want to talk about some political issue, they want to raise awareness about a cause, or even if they're in like a local band. I just want to talk to them because I think they're all really interesting. Now, I see myself as the kind of guy who can have pretty good conversations with people. I can have pretty long conversations. Not like any episode of this podcast is going to be super long, but, I'm aiming, or at least for this episode, is only going to be about 30 minutes, I'd say. But I do plan for the other episodes to be around 45 minutes to an hour. I don't want to make it any longer than that because all of the people I want to interview, I'm sure, are already late on time and they have other better things to get back to. And I know that a lot of people that are listening to this podcast probably don't want to spend a ton of time listening to podcasts. This podcast, I don't think, is really aimed at people who are, let's say, have a lot of time. At least the kind of people that I imagine listen to this podcast are people who, they don't listen to podcasts all the time. And at least for me, the only time I really listen to podcasts is, when I'm working on homework or I'm writing something or I'm editing something. Or honestly, 90% of the time that I get in with my podcast that I listen to, which is only like 3 or 4. But, all of the podcasts that I listen to, I usually listen to most of them in the car. So I don't want to make this podcast super long. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I kind of just want to get in and get out with these interviews with maybe an hour max. But at least for this first episode, we're going to do about 30 minutes here. Plan to. I don't know. We'll see how long I can talk for, which is usually pretty a long time. But seeing as it's just me, I don't know if you guys want to listen to just me or what. But, this is, I've had a little bit of a hassle recording this podcast here because the first time I was recording it, I ended up using the wrong input for the microphone. So it was using the microphone that was built into the computer and not the Shure microphone that I have right here that I'm using. And let's just say that put me into a bit of a fugue state for about 10 minutes trying to fix my own problems. But here I am again, trying hard so you guys can listen to me. But I'm sure, maybe, how about this? Since this is a podcast about interviewing interesting people, I figure you guys should know about the person that is interviewing the people that you are being interviewed to, if that statement made sense. So what I plan on doing here is interviewing really cool people. And this comes from a background is me, just somebody who I just like to talk to people. I like to have conversations. It could be about anything as long as the person I'm talking to isn't super rude. That's what I like to do. I like to talk to people. I like to have conversations. Coming back to those long late night conversations you had with your friend, that's what I like to do all the time. And I feel like I don't get to do it often enough. And plus, I like talking to new people that I've never met before. I honestly think it's where I shine. I think I shine at talking to people, random people that I never met before, and having good conversations with them. Now, hopefully, that comes off here in the way that I interview people in future, because um, I have to get people on the podcast. I have to reach out through meeting people through their Instagram, through this podcast Instagram, which is at BoonePod, by the way, on Instagram, and whatever other social medias are up for the podcast when this episode comes out. I'm thinking about Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, and maybe later on down the line, whenever I can get Spotify or, wherever else I can get podcasts going on. That'd be really cool because it's always great to have a multitude of places where people can find their podcasts because not everybody uses Spotify, not everybody uses Apple Podcasts or like Amazon Podcasts. I think I don't really know how podcasts work on Amazon. I don't know any sane person that's not in jail that listens to Amazon Music or Amazon Podcasts, but I'm sure there are a few of you out there. So about me. I am currently attending App State, going for my CIS degree. I was a CS student, but that's neither here nor there that I changed my major. And I'm working on that right now. And what really got me interested on starting this podcast is that when I'm walking around campus, I see all of these really cool, interesting people that I want to talk to. People that are doing really interesting things. Like, I think just like a week or two ago, there are these people out in the courtyard talking about how App State was a scam and all that. And I thought about it. And I'm like, wow, I would really like to talk to these people. But I didn't want to go up to them while they were, talking to other people, raising their cause. So I'm like, well, maybe I could get them on a podcast or something because that'd be a much better way to record it. So what I plan on doing is that I really want to talk to those people. Yeah, I think now it would be hard for me to find those people that were trying to spread awareness about something on the courtyard. And to be honest, I really don't know what they were trying to spread awareness about because I was rushing to class. I didn't really get to talk. I didn't really get to see them for long. And by the time I got out of class, they were gone. So I don't really know what happened to them. If anybody could list on this podcast could get me their information where I could email them or message them on Instagram so I could talk to them, that'd be fantastic. But other than that, I see a ton of really, really, really cool people on campus that I'm like, I would love to sit down and have a conversation with you because since this is a university campus and especially since it's App State, there's some really cool creative people on campus that do a ton of things, whether that be art, music, whatever. And there's tons of self-expression on this campus that you see everywhere that you might not even realize you're seeing. Like, especially one of my favorite places on campus is the graffiti tunnels. Maybe they're called the App State Free Expression Tunnels, but me and my friends have always called them the graffiti tunnels. We always see them, I at least try to walk by them at least twice a week, even if it's out of my path and I'm trying to find another way around. I love going through those free expression tunnels or the graffiti tunnels so that I can see, what's going on. Because those are a great place where you can find out what's going on campus or even what's on social media, any crazy thing that's happening in politics right now. If you see it, it's going to be down there in those tunnels. And it's great because I just love to go walk around there and take pictures of all the cool art I see. I mean, I guess all the funny memes I see down there too. But mostly all the art, the messages that people are trying to talk about in those free expression tunnels because it's almost like an old-fashioned forum board, I don't want to say it's like a Reddit thread, but it's, I would say it's kind of an analog similarity type thing, right? Because people are going in there and they have an issue they want to write about. They have some art they want to make, and they go in there and they make it. Because you are allowed to go in there and spray paint or draw on those walls as much as you want. And then I think it's either once a week or once a month. I'm really not sure. I haven't been able to find out the answer because recently I've been going in there so infrequently. But you go in there and you can just fully draw whenever you want. No, I'm saying now I know people are hearing there like, oh, you can draw anything you want there. And I'm sure some ne'er do wells are going to are going to go in there and are going to draw something that they probably shouldn't be doing. Something racist or otherwise not good, maybe transphobic, homophobic, and that's something that you know hopefully nobody on this campus would stand for and do, especially racism, homophobia, or transphobia, because I personally won't stand for that. But, I really like going down there and seeing all the cool art. I have an entire folder on my phone with at least 200 pictures of cool art I find down there because drawing art in those free expression tunnels is nearly the same thing as like drawing art on the beach, like doing sand art, because both instances you go in there and you record, not record, I don't know why I said that, I'm so sorry guys. You go in there and you draw your art with by knowing that it's going to eventually go away. That's not something you can really say about stuff that gets posted online or even paintings, because with paintings or art you post online, that's going to be there forever. I know your parents have told you this before, kids, but when you post something online, it's there forever, no matter how hard you think it is for people to find. That cringy post you made on Facebook 13 years ago is still there. I'm sorry to tell you. But unlike that, art you post in the free expression tunnel or even on the beach, you go in there knowing that that art is eventually going to go away for no one to ever see again. And there's something beautiful about going in there and recording and making temporary art that only a selective few amount of people are going to see, or that you might not ever see again once you get done with it. So hopefully it's one of those things where you better take a picture. That's why I've taken so many pictures in the free expression tunnel there, because I know if I didn't take a picture, that art would be gone by the next time I came through. And that's really cool. I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's not going to be there forever, so what's the point? But there is something beautiful in making temporary art that someone put this much time into that is going onto this wall that they know will eventually be gone in some time. And people who make stuff like that, I know they're hard to find because I'm pretty sure most of the people that go in there and do their art in there do it in the middle of the night or, on the weekends when nobody's on campus. So I really love that place. And it's got me thinking, why is it in the tunnels? Why in the tunnels and not some wall on campus where people can go in and draw wherever they want? And my little conspiracy theory here, maybe it's not a conspiracy theory, is that because it is a free expression tunnel where anybody can go in there and draw anything they want, maybe they don't want people like driving past to see it. Because if somebody draws something that maybe is a highly political opinion, whether it's, Democrat, Republican, whatever opinion it is, if it's a very political message, maybe they don't want their sweet, sweet investors that are driving by, aka like Christian moms or whatever, to see the art on the wall or in the tunnel, I guess. So they don't, because then some kid will be like, then the parent will be like, actually, you're not going to school here if they let their students do that. So that's why I'm assuming they haven't done it on a wall, although I would love to see it on the wall, because as much art as there is around campus, I would love for there to be more, because, as someone who very frequently visits the library on campus, the Upstate Library, the only art in the library is very very corporate standard art, that you find on the walls. But then you go to the lower levels and there's tons of art everywhere. Like the lower levels of the library have so much personality. It honestly almost makes up for the rest of the library, because in that case, like on the lower floor of the library, I very rarely go to the lower floors of the library, but I've been there once or twice. And, that's where they recently put in the maker space where there's a bunch of 3D printers and stuff where you can go in there and make really cool stuff. And honestly, that is fantastic that they're doing that. They're letting people make more art, because that is a really good way for people who, have never been with a 3D printer or have never used a 3D printer to go in there, learn how to use it, and then maybe after they learn how to use it, they use it in the library enough They can, just go in there and make whatever they want. And I'm sure that is a great learning experience for kids and all that stuff. Because I know I was there on the opening day when they went, and there were a bunch of moms who brought their kids in there. I'm like, wow, this is great letting their kids mess with all this stuff. Because I'm sure I don't want to sound pretentious here, but it inspires a creative flame inside of them to want to make more art. And that's something I think in this world that we really need is more art. Anyways, I'll get off of my pretentious viewpoints here. But the lower levels of the library are filled with art. There's like this giant bear statue. There's arts everywhere. There's like board games you can get down here. There's tons of cool computers. Like, this place is great for just hanging out and messing with stuff. And even for I could totally see this place being great for group projects. Whereas the upper floors of the library, they're more like sectioned off places. Because, the first floor is where all the standard stuff is. It's where the lobby is. You go to the second floor. The second floor is where, I guess, more meant for group projects, because that's the floor where, you can talk and all this stuff. Now, the floor I usually relied in and creep upon is the third floor, because the third floor is where it's the silence hall. It's where you can go in there and you're not supposed to talk, right? Even though people do. But, you're not supposed to go in there. You're not supposed to talk a ton. That's the floor where you go and work in silence, which for me personally, that's the only way I can work on homework for. But, that's neither here nor there. Plus, they've got a bunch of computers in there, a bunch of Macs, Windows, whichever you prefer. I'm all over the place on which one I prefer more because I use both interchangeably. But, some people prefer Mac, some people prefer Windows. It's just whichever one you choose. And then the fourth floor, I'm going to be honest, I've never been on the fourth floor. Just, I don't know what's up there. Like Hogwarts could be up there. Narnia could be up there. I don't know. I've never been to the fourth floor. I don't know what it is. So I'm personally confused. Maybe I'll get back to you guys on that later in a separate episode. But, as for now, I don't know what's on that floor. But the library itself is a really cool place. I see a lot of people hanging out here. And the fact that it's 24/7, which I didn't know until a week ago, or a few weeks ago, I guess. A lot of people, I honestly think the coolest people are in the library at the latest times. Because earlier this week, I was in here working on some homework for one of my classes. Just, I just wanted to get it done early so I could relax. It's almost fall break. I'm doing nothing for the rest of the week. So I'm in here at, midnight, working on an assignment. I've got Adobe Premiere open. I'm working on a little project I'm working on, right? And here I am, sitting here on a computer, and there's 5 other people around me that are still here at midnight. I didn't check to ask what they were working on. I didn't want to be creepy and stare at the computer monitors, but I don't know what they were working on. But it amazed me how many people were here at midnight. And it just goes to show you how App State, at least the student body, is a very 24/7 kind of thing, because everybody is doing something constantly. And I love that, because despite Boone having a very lack of a nightlife, I think, App State doesn't really, not App State, but, Boone as a town doesn't have much of a nightlife, because despite it being very much a college-centric town, there's really not much to do after 10 o'clock. That's when most of the restaurants close. That's when most everything fun closes. As my friends say, the only thing to do in Boone after 10 o'clock is to drink, because that's when all of the bars are open. But, there's not much to do in Boone after 10 o'clock. But here they are on App State campus, going to the library, which I think is the only building on campus that's 24/7. They're out here doing things. They're working on group projects. They're working on digital media projects. They're working on everything here at midnight. And that was crazy to me. I couldn't believe this many people were up. Because, in the town where I come from, little small town down the mountain, Hudson, North Carolina, after 10 o'clock, that's a working blue-collar town. Everybody's asleep because they have to wake up at 6 a.m. the next morning to go to work. So the fact that Boone, a college town with that many people awake after midnight, kind of surprised me, because where I was coming from, I hadn't done that before. Another thing that surprised me about Boone, and even App State, I guess, is how walkable the town itself is. Because where I come from, Hudson, North Carolina, I know I just said it a minute or two ago. you can't really walk around because unless you are in the main part of town where sidewalks go to nowhere and they end up going absolutely nowhere, um, you can't really walk around. It's a very car centric town, which is something I didn't really jive with. But then I come up here, I come up to Boone, North Carolina. The entire town is completely walkable. From the entrance of 321 to all the way to any end of Boone you could think of, there's a sidewalk going everywhere. And that amazed me because, coming from a very car centric town and a very car centric place of the country, um, I wasn't used to being able to walk everywhere. I know it's like any European would get on me for about this, but I couldn't believe how walkable the city was and how nice it was. Just being able to walk out of my apartment, walk to my friend's place, and then walk to the restaurant to get some dinner with my friends. That blew my mind away. I couldn't believe it. And I know this is like, oh, you're just Mason. Why are you so astonished by this? I don't know. I just was. I was astonished that I could walk that far and go to that many places without a car. Now, obviously, anywhere I want to go outside of Boone, I do have to have a car. I don't really drive much now anymore. I drive maybe once a week. I do walk 90% of the places to my classes, to my friends' houses, wherever I'm going at Boone. I do walk 90% of the places. That's neither here nor there. I was just surprised that I could walk everywhere. Because Boone is, despite being a town in North Carolina, or I guess a city, North Carolina, it's a very small city, but despite it being in North Carolina, Boone is a very, and I guess I attest this to Boone being a college town, Boone's very progressive. I think it's a very, for lack of a better word, it's a very liberal town. Especially during Pride Month, there were pride flags everywhere. Nobody's going to make fun of you except for, the mean people. Nobody's going to make fun of you for expressing yourself any way you believe, and I think that's great, especially for a college campus with as many creative people as there are here. I have never seen in my life the amount of people on App State campus that are that on a different level of fashionable than on App State campus. And maybe I just haven't visited enough college campuses, because maybe other college campuses are like this. But App State is full of very progressive, nice, accepting people. And I feel like that is definitely a thing for, our generation, Gen Z, anybody born after like 2000, really. But App State is a very accepting, progressive campus. I know some people get annoyed by how many emails the chancellor sends or whatever, especially about like promoting equality and everybody being accepted, and especially all of these signs around campus are like, you are welcome here. Or I think nearly every coffee shop on campus has a gay pride flag, a trans pride flag, or whatever kind of pride flag you can imagine is probably on every coffee shop on campus. And I think that's really nice, especially for people who, they come to college and they find maybe they're learning new things about themselves, and they're coming on campus and they see all these flags and they see that they are accepted and that they're welcome. And that couldn't make me any happier, because I just think that's great. People being accepted for who they are. And there's a bunch of different clubs. There's a bunch of different places in the student union that are, I think there's one place in the student union that is like a multicultural place. I've never been in there because, I'm a white guy. I've never been in there. I don't know if I really fit in at a multicultural union place. But, it's really cool. I'm really glad people have places like that on campus. And maybe I just haven't explored enough campus, but I would love to see more places like that. There's a bunch of clubs for acceptance or support groups. There's even a welcome place for therapy. There's easy access to therapy on campus. And I think that's great. I think overall App State is a very, safe, welcoming, accepting campus, especially for creatives or whatever you're here for, whatever major you're getting, math, engineering, whatever kind of science you're going for. I think that's great. And I'm just glad to see more like it. I just, it is kind of a shock when you're going down the mountain, especially from 321 down to Lenoir. People may not be as accepting as they are here in Lenoir, North Carolina. I'm not saying Lenoir, North Carolina is a bad place, but it's definitely not as accepting as App State, because, you drive down the mountain through 321, you may see a few Confederate flags and kind of surprised they're still there. But, you'll see those every now and then. Anyways, back to campus. Campus life here is great. I mean, campus, there's tons of events here. Speaking of events, at Legends, if you don't know, Legends is a concert hall, or it's more than a concert hall, I guess, but yeah, it's mainly a concert hall. You can go there and see tons of local bands. Recently, I say recently, like the concert itself wasn't on September 1st, but recently I went to a concert featuring two local metal bands, metal, rock. I'm sorry if this offends anyone. I didn't know what they classified themselves as. And I saw Sloth, that's Sloth with two H's, by the way, and Felspar, two local metal bands. And Jesus Christ, guys, they were amazing. They were absolutely fantastic. I couldn't believe, how good they were. They were fantastic. They were really, really good. So if you can find them online, on their Spotify, on their Instagram, I think Sloth's Instagram is Sloth Band. I think Felspar is Felspar Band. And then you can find them on Spotify just looking up their names. You'll probably find them. You'll be able to find them because they probably, this may sound rude, I think they have around 1,000 monthly listeners, which for a local band in Boone is absolutely fantastic. I would love to have at least one member of both bands on the podcast. I would love to interview them because they're so cool. By the way, check out their Instagram, guys. Both of their Instagrams are absolutely hilarious. I follow them, and sadly, I haven't been able to catch one of their shows since because I don't want to say I'm lazy, but at the same time, I'm lazy and very busy. So I'm having a hard time, finding them. But, maybe eventually I will be able to catch one of their shows. But both shows that they've had in Boone have either been house shows, or I don't think they've had any more shows at local. I mean, at Legends, that'd be really cool. I don't think they have. I think most of their shows recently have been house shows, but I haven't been able to catch any of those shows, and I really want to. And I think both bands had a show in Asheville and Charlotte, I think. They seem to be good friends, but I'm really not sure. I would love to see more local bands, but those are the only local bands I've seen so far. Finding local bands, especially in Boone, are maybe a little hard to find. They're a little obscure because, you're not going to see them on the App State subreddit. You're not going to see them on the Boone subreddit. They're kind of just a thing you have to, you see one post somewhere and you go see them. But I just haven't been able to catch them. So if anybody can, reach out to them, honestly, I might reach out to them too and see if they'd like to be on the podcast. Maybe just one member. I don't have to have the entire band. That would be a little hard to record. But, I would love to have them on the podcast to talk to because they're just great people to talk to, I think. I don't know. I don't know any of them personally. And I'm about to wrap it up here. We're at about 28 minutes here. I want to make this around 30 minutes probably. But, if you think you'd like to be on the podcast, or if you know anybody cool that you'd like to hear on the podcast, or there's any big figures on campus that you'd like to hear on the podcast, just hit up the email at boonepod@gmail.com. It'll be in the description too. But if you want to hear anything, if you want to see anybody on the podcast, you have any tips, suggestions to me, or you think you'd, just like to send me an email telling me that I did a good job or a bad job, we'll see how this podcast goes. Hit up the email, hit up the Instagram, hit up the Twitter, hit up the YouTube, and Spotify and other podcast places coming up next. But, shout out, at the very end here, I want to shout out the other 5 to 6 podcasts that are in Boone right now. 4 of them are made by the city of Boone themselves, by the city of Commerce, and one is made, I'm sorry, I don't want to check my phone right now, but I can't remember the name of the man who makes Fall Risk. If you guys have not listened to Fall Risk yet, please check out Fall Risk. That podcast is great. He interviews a lot of local bands around here. I wouldn't say his podcasts are similar they're not really a normal kind of podcast episode like this one is. But, he goes around, he interviews bands, they play sets on his podcast. They're great. And I want to say thanks to him for being the main interest for this podcast, because I was really inspired to make this podcast listening to him and being like, if he can make a podcast in Boone centered around Boone, maybe I can too. So I got to looking. There's maybe only 6 podcasts total to have ever come out of Boone in its entire history. And none of them were posting anymore. Because as much as I love Fall Risk, I don't think he's posted in a while. I'd have to get back to you guys on that one, but he hasn't really uploaded in a while. And I don't know whether that's because he's graduated or what. But, he just hasn't uploaded in a while, right? So I saw that, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm good enough to take his spot, but I would definitely like to do close to the same thing he did. I think my podcast, or at least this podcast, is going to be a little bit more of a traditional podcast than you usually hear, because Fall Risk he is too special to be copied. I'm not going to do an episode, or actually, I don't know, maybe I'll have to see whether I do this or not. But I don't think I'm going to do an episode where I am like walking through a forest recording off of my phone, because my phone probably will have the crunchiest microphone you've ever heard, because I'm recording with a pretty nice Shure microphone right here. I don't want to submit you guys to listen to a podcast through my mic on my phone, but that's neither here nor there. But thank you guys so much for listening to test episode 0, episode 1 of BoonePod. I really haven't decided yet. You'll figure out what I decide when I actually upload this episode. But thank you so much for listening. Catch you next time, and I will announce on the Twitter and the Instagram next time when a podcast is coming out. So, just keep your eyes updated on the socials, updated on the YouTube, and I will see you guys around. Thank you so much for listening.